Hello there. Welcome to episode 34 of Bow and Blade, a podcast brought to you by medievalists.net, your home for all things medieval on the internet. Bow and Blade gives you a seat at the bar as scholars of medieval warfare go beyond the Wikipedia articles to talk about the debates and the questions that we're working on today. I'm Michael Livingston, Distinguished Professor at the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina.
And I'm Kelly DeVries, Professor of History at Loyola University, and for the year, Distinguished Visiting Professor at the Air Force Academy.
And we are talking today about a really cool battle. We're excited for this one. By popular demand.
Yeah.
Battle of Aljubarrota in 1385. What are you going to drink for this one?
I'm kind of divided here. My usual go-to is Portuguese red. I think Portuguese red wines are superb. But we were at Leeds, and our Portuguese friends delivered a very fine bottle of port, which I then, because you went gallivanting off to some media event very quickly, I had the duty to finish myself. Actually, finished
You
with
did.
Can Ruth, where I went afterwards, and it was an awfully good bottle of port. So maybe I'm going to have a glass of Portuguese red to start, and then move
Mm.
to the port.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you had admitted publicly that I got none of
No,
that
you
port.
got none of that. Yes,
I
yes,
got absolutely none of. I got to see the bottle, and that was the end of that.
it was very good,
Yeah,
by the way. Just so I rub it in one more time.
yeah, no, I appreciate that a lot. I love, I love red wine. Rioja, I love Riojas. Here, though, I think, I mean, it's got to be a Portuguese red. Stones and Bones,
Yeah,
Tinto. Stones and Bones is a bottle that Kelly and I have shared numerous times.
yes,
Terrific bottle.
terrific.
Um, so yeah, I think I'm gonna go with a Portuguese red. They make good wines. They make good wines.
Yeah, beautiful
But
country.
you can have your port. That's all right.
Yeah.
You can have your port. It's good. Yeah. So as I said, this is kind of by uh, popular demand because the crowd of our Iberian friends are like, when are you going to do? When are you going to do one of the big dogs of Iberia? And Aljubarrota is on that list,
It is
man.
on that list. Yeah.
It is on that list. This is a cool battle, and there's numerous things that make this cool. I mean, obviously, it's sad people died, obviously,
Yeah.
but for people that study battles, this is kind of a good one. What first brought you to looking at Algebra?
Well, when I was grad school, I was looking primarily at the 14th century battles up in the Low Countries. And I kept running across this article that had been translated in English on the battlefield excavation. It was one of the few, almost the first, I think, for medieval battle to have somebody systematically excavate the battlefield of Aljubarrota. His name was Alfonso de Paso, and it had been translated done in the 50s, and it had been translated. And it was really cool to read something that was, informing me. I was so much into the battles, but something that was informing me from someone who had actually looked at the terrain, and it helped me understand, that the battle is, as we've said, it's the landscape.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we're always kind of like, well, was the battle here? Was it there? I don't know. We know where this one
We know
is.
what this one is. Yeah, yeah,
Unless,
I found
unless
everything.
for some reason there was another battle that happened there, and some no, we know where this one
Yeah,
is. We know exactly
yeah.
where
Of
it was.
course, it did
And
help that the Portuguese win. Cat's out the bag there.
yeah,
The Portuguese win. And there was a huge monastery that was stuck up there, which I fortunately, as a young scholar, was able to visit too. And this is similar to what went up at Hastings. Uh, a therefore as a votive offering of thanks to deity. And they've excavated bodies there. They found things on the battlefield that let us know that the sources are accurate. So it's all really interesting to have that, plus sources from both sides, and Froissart having interviewed people from both sides.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you really kind of nail it there. This is so awesome to have all the pieces of the puzzle for once. It's not like so many of the battles we look at and we're like, yeah, we have this source. It's really great. No idea if we can trust it. No idea. And we have these sources and they disagree and we can't figure out how to make them work. Aljubarrota stuff fits really well, and we
It fits
have
really
so
well.
many disparate pieces of that puzzle. We've got sources on both sides. As you said, Froissart, the great Froissart, and we rag on Froissart sometimes because he's easy to rag on, but also is a hell of a source. And yeah, he
Yeah.
talked to eyewitnesses. It's like this is what they said.
Yep. And
Uh,
and records both of it. Doesn't try to meld these. He
right.
records both of the discussions he has with with soldiers who fought on the battle from different sides, which is really nice to have not his interpretation, but it's almost like reading an oral history of two old vets.
Yeah. Yeah. And as I said, to be able to pin this stuff to the landscape, for us who really believe that the landscape is everything, this is like ground zero for showing that in action. And there's been subsequent digging, since then. There's been subsequent digs,
Yeah.
so our information about the battle has gotten really really detailed. And I know I've used Aljubarrota in my coming book on Agincourt. There's something where I'm trying to figure out something. I was like, well, look, this is how they did it at Aljubarrota. Let's use that as the model because we know that's how it was there. Like this is
Yeah.
the angle of such and such. That'll work. Um,
And we have that it's one of these again where we have the French, and it's in the Hundred Years' War, but it's a proxy war for the Hundred Years' War. French are supporting the Castilian side, English are supporting the Portuguese side.
yeah, and we actually talked before we kind of came on here recording. How are we gonna go about getting y'all into this? And we talked about whether or not we should. I think a lot of folks would approach this Hundred Years' War based and frame it that way,
Yeah,
which is a very kind of Anglo-centric, Franco-centric, whatever, like way of thinking about it. That England and France dominate everything, so let's start there and then add this in. And neither of us felt like that was the way to go. That
no,
it's better to give this its place within and of itself, not as a kind of collateral side note to Hundred Years' War.
yeah. This is it, in many ways, this is an Iberian conflict. It's two kingdoms on the Iberian Peninsula fighting each other, and they have a few French on one side and a few English on the other side. But the focus up to this period in time, except for the Portuguese and the Iberian Spanish focus, has always been to look through the eyes of England and France as if this is central to the Hundred Years' War. It is not.
Yeah,
It
it's
may
not.
be influential, as you point out. It may be influential, and it's important in the next generation. I mean, this is going to tie into England and the fact that that pretender navigator is also then the grandson of John of Gaunt and a few things like this. But I agree completely. This is an Iberian conflict. Castile wants Portugal, and Portugal doesn't want to be Castile.
Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, that's it, and that's a good way of putting it because yeah, it's too often we kind of focus on just what's England and what's relevant to England, and obviously part of that is that's what people maybe are more familiar with, and so this is a good way of getting into it. But we just don't want to do that. So
No,
so we
no,
want to talk about this as um, as an Iberian conflict that also happens to have French and English contingents there because they gravitate like magnets to something where the other person's there in many respects.
yeah,
Uh, but
yeah.
yeah,
It's
so
peace is reign, and peace is in the Hundred Years' War. Nobody's fighting there, so let's just go off to the coast.
let's go find
Let's go to
someplace.
the
Hey,
beach.
hey,
Yeah.
there's the other side there. Let's fight. Yeah. So the sources of this, I mean, as with anything in history, you could go all kinds of distance away from the battle. But I don't think we really need to. I think we can just start like 2 years before the battle.
2 years before the
Um,
battle, yeah.
two
Yeah,
years
one
before the
king
battle.
dies.
A king dies, yeah.
Yeah.
So a king kicks the bucket. The king of Portugal uh, kicked it, and you have a situation in which there is not everybody's agreeing upon the heir. Who is
Yeah.
going to take over? And
So same old on that.
yeah, I mean, it's like anytime a king dies without a clear heir, there's usually a problem. And here we
Yeah.
go. There's a problem. This is, if you're familiar with it, it's like the anarchy in England, right? You have the king dies and no, it's mine. No, it's mine. He said I could have it. No, he said like, all right. So that's what we got here. We have the Portuguese interregnum, it's sometimes called, which
Yeah.
between kings. That gives you everything you need to know there. King Ferdinand the First, Ferdinand the Handsome, which I am a fan of Ferdinand uh, for no political reason whatsoever, but my dog is named Ferdinand.
Yes.
And so,
And your dog is handsome too.
and he's handsome. He's such a
Yes.
handsome boy. He's a
But
handsome boy.
I have called him Ferdinand Loray.
Yes. Every time Kelly's like, "Oh, how you doing, Lorraine?" And Ferdinand's an idiot French bulldog. He's just like, "Yeah, I
Yeah.
love you. It's great." Um, so yeah, so he's a handsome boy, as we say. Who's a handsome boy? I hope he's listening right now. You're a good boy, Ferdinand.
Yeah.
Unless you've been licking that paw again, in which case you're not. You need to stuff it. Anyway,
Yeah, so 1383, Ferdinand the Loray, Ferdinand the First of Portugal drops dead
gone,
unexpectedly.
gone,
Gone.
gone. And now who's going to get to be the king? Well, multiple claimants. And in particular for us, the ones that really matter are two guys that have the same name,
They
right?
have
I
the same
mean,
name.
why are we going to do this to us? Come on, guys.
Yeah, yeah.
Can one of you go by Bruce and just make this easier?
Yeah, that's right. John and John,
John and John,
except in Spanish, John is Juan.
Juan, yeah,
Portugal or Portuguese, John is Juano.
yeah,
Juano.
uh,
What are we going to do?
John,
John.
John and John.
Uh,
John of Portugal, John of Castile. And it doesn't even help that they are also like the first of their name kind of thing. It's John the First of Portugal and John the First of Castile. Like, come on.
yeah.
Give us a bone here, something. Yeah. And in this sense, the John of Portugal, he is not the direct claimant to this. It's not like he was the son
No.
of the outgoing king. So he's trying to step into that position. The King of Castile is like, well, I should just go ahead and have it. And we get a war. I mean, is it a civil war? It's a civil war in the eyes of Castile
Right.
because John of Castile is like, well, this is all just mine. So you're rebelling, right? This is a civil war from the idea of many of the Portuguese who are rallying behind their King John. This is just, let's keep the Castilians from kind of taking over the joint.
Yeah. It doesn't help that Ferdinand's only child is Beatrice,
Beatrice, yeah,
uh, and she's marrying or supposed to be marrying John of Castile,
of Castile, yeah,
which gives him a little more legitimacy in this.
yeah,
But boy, the Portuguese just do not want Castile involved, and it would have changed the map. I think had Castile said, "Okay, you guys," or had Portugal said, "Okay, Castile, we'll be part of you." I don't know that there'd be a Portugal today.
yeah. Probably wouldn't be actually. Yeah, and it's sort of, yeah, you sort of draw that forward. Yeah, it is a fraught moment, right? It's definitely a fraught moment when fighting starts to break out. And as the fighting breaks out over the 2 years, it is sort of pushing people to take sides. Whereas initially it's sort of it's a disgruntled agreement. When armies start getting in the field, blood is being shed. You start getting like, well, now I do have a dog in the fight, and this is my side. And yes, the English back the Portuguese, and the French back the Castilians. In the start of this stuff, I have to say in the start of this stuff because it gets more complicated post Aljubarrota. It gets even more weird, but that has to do with what happens in Castile. We don't have to deal with that today.
Yeah.
We don't have to deal with that today.
And this is a little different than Nyera, which happens, a generation before, in that the distance is too far. So the French, when we talk about French backing, we're talking about a few hundred soldiers is all, and no real French military presence, no Bertrand de Guesclin here. On the same with the English on the Portuguese side. There's no leadership there. There's no Black Prince. John of Gaunt's not there. And there's a few archers, a few hundred archers, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, we have some sources that say there's upwards of 1,000, maybe 2,000 French knights. I don't think we can really back that up, but we have sources that say it. But yeah, nobody says there's many English there, and it's not, as you said, the kind of leadership stuff. Who are the commanders? They're not English or French. They're not.
No, they're not.
Who's making the plans? It ain't the English or French. Which again is part of the reason why we didn't want to sort of approach this from that kind of perspective. It's an internal thing, and the brilliant tactical positions that are taken in this battle by one side are to that side's credit. It's not, oh well, did they get that from the English there or something like that? I'm sure there's people that have written historical novels that do it that way or something like that. The Englishmen came in and saved them. Like, there's no indication of that. They knew what they were doing and they did it well.
And they did very well. Yeah.
Yeah, super well.
Yeah, and in fact, I mean, again, kind of let out the ending a little bit. I don't think the Castilians do anything wrong. They're just not as good as the Portuguese are on this. This is leadership. This is one of the battles that you look at and you say, okay, this was really well led on both sides.
Yeah, there's kind of one mistake it looks like that the Castilians make at the start, but after that, yeah, they're in good shape, and that mistake was kind of an understandable one. But we'll get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, Aljubarrota. This comes around in August of 1385, and what you've got is a massive Castilian army with some number of French knights with them, but they're very much in the minority. Even if they've got 1,000, it's way fewer than the number of Castilians in this. So you have a massive Castilian army coming in to confront, like, let's settle this once and for all. And from John of Castile's position, reiterate this was my place all along, and you're rebelling, and I'm going to put down the rebellion. And from John of Portugal's standpoint, no, man, this is it. They're coming, they're invading us. This is our kind of moment to stand against the invader. So it is, I guess we'll kind of use that language of invader and invaded. I know that's sort of taking the Portuguese side, I suppose.
Well, and they do win, so I guess we could say
so we'll go with that. Yeah,
we'll go with that. But no, I think it's two sides of two inheritors that are battling out over who's going to lead. And the Castilians are invading Portuguese territory, even though they claim it as their own. So yeah, I think we have to go that direction. Watch, we will not get any Spanish support in this at all.
Sorry, guys.
I love your wine. We're coming in. No. Portugal's was ours. It still is.
And the confrontation takes place. The battle, the joining of battle, is on a place chosen by the Portuguese, and that is very important to what happens here.
Yeah,
extremely important. The Portuguese know this army is coming. They know the road they're coming on, and the Portuguese army takes position basically facing that road, standing in the way.
Yeah.
Here's where we are. Come and get us. And again, we know exactly where that is. How cool is that? How crazy is that? So you can go there. The
Yeah, they've got an interpretive center now. I haven't seen it. That's been put up since I visited the battlefield. So and yeah, it reveals some of the archaeology.
we got to go. We got to make that another trip.
Yeah.
So this is north of Lisbon, inland. There's a town called Bataha, and it's south of there. There's kind of that's your nearest kind of big town, as it were, and it's south there. But you can just Google Aljubarrota and find this thing.
Hmm.
The key, really, to understanding how this battle unfolds is you'll see when you look at this on a map. There's a road that is going up the center of a essentially kind of like a plateau between two streams. So these two streams on either side of this. I mean, it's almost just like a big wedge up there. And there's a pretty steep slope on the northern side of that, and that's the direction the Castilians are coming. So the Portuguese take position on this hill, and they have a nice slope in front of them. So you got to climb uphill, pretty steep slope. You got to climb uphill if you want to come get us. And their flanks are totally protected by the sides going into this creek.
Yeah.
And this is the essential. A battle is its ground. This is the reason they chose this ground. They have smaller numbers, and this position helps them with that. It
Yeah.
makes that no
Yeah.
longer a problem. I mean, they're probably outnumbered, what, 2-1?
Oh yeah, I think so. The numbers and the most recent book goes through the numbers and tries to come up with a reasonable a reasonable interpretation of the various numbers that we get, because medieval numbers are always very
Yeah,
difficult. But let's just say there's a lot of Castilians and not as many Portuguese.
not as many Portuguese. A whole bunch of them, a whole lot fewer of us. But we take position where there's only so much space.
Hmm.
There's only so much ground here. You can have a lot of numbers, but you can't bring them all to bear. And there's no way to kind of immediately outflank to left or right because we got these little valleys in the stream on either side. So even on the landscape today, you can see what a smart positioning this is that the Portuguese have taken. Their formation we have fairly well described. What's their foundation?
Well, they've done the standard thing where they've got the men at arms dismounted in the middle. In fact, we don't think any are on horse at this point in the Portuguese
Mm,
army, and they have the wings with crossbowmen and the English longbow. Not a lot of English longbowmen there, not a lot of crossbowmen, but enough, and to funnel this battle the way they want. But they've done something else too, which is they get there early enough to dig trenches that will funnel the battle further. And these are what the archaeologists have found, because the Portuguese sources and Froissart have both said they're there.
yeah,
And you know, it's not unusual for a 14th century battle. Votum in up by Liège has them. Courtrai, of course, has them. Bannockburn has them. It's not unusual for trenches that may be there already, as for watering agricultural land, irrigation. But these seem to have also been altered,
yeah.
um, and are made by the Portuguese to add to the way that they want the battle to go.
Yeah, and importantly, most of these that have been found in archaeology are not where I've just described things being set up. That's actually behind the Portuguese position. So if you think the Portuguese are facing north, the Castilians are coming down the road in front of them. They've taken position on this high ground, steep slope in front of them. Their flanks protected on either side by a creek, and here come the Castilians. Well, the Castilians do the smart thing.
Yeah.
They don't screw this up. They are smart. They look, okay, we got these guys up there. They're on high ground. It's a steep slope to get up there. They're really, their flanks are controlled really nicely. That's going to be brutal just to try and frontal assault this thing. But you know what? If we go around the hill, we could come up the backside, and the slope isn't as steep, and we'll be coming into their rear. So let's do that, which is brilliant. This is good planning, Castile. But the Portuguese are smart, and they kind of figured that was what could happen. And so before the battle, they had put in place, as Kelly just described, all these trenching. Like they had done earth work before the battle to their rear to protect that side of their position. I mean, the position they've taken is just amazingly good. And it had to be such a bummer for the Castilians to be like, we made the right move. And it meant then that we were now going to attack the south side of the Portuguese position. So, right, they've flipped around and are now going to, charge north into the Portuguese position. And it's almost a worse situation. Yeah, the slope's not as bad, but now there's all these ditches and trenches we got to deal with that funnel us in and prevent us from having freedom of movement. Yeah, it's a staggeringly terrific bit of foresight on the part of the Portuguese. Bummer luck for the Castilians. Really bummer luck. And it's also impressive, one has to say, that the Portuguese, as this is happening, essentially flip their battle, like from facing to the north to facing the south. They have to flip their whole force around, while they're kind of under threat. It's pretty impressive, honestly.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious what you think about this because it's been said that the Portuguese lured the Castilians to doing that. That this was the intention all along of Portuguese, and of course the problem is we do have a letter from Juan of Castile uh, telling about the battle, which is interesting because he loses it, and so he's writing about a battle that he lost, but we don't have the same out of the leadership of the Portuguese. It would be wonderful to find a letter that's from Juan of Portugal saying, "Oh, by the way, yeah, we didn't really want to fight on the North Slope. We wanted them to come up the South Slope. All that was our intention from the very beginning."
Yeah.
And because I kind of think that that may be it. And lately, historians have been looking at it, uh, but it's a risk.
Yeah, I don't think I think they intended to fight on the north slope. I think the south slope is protecting your luggage. This is protecting the rear position. I don't see it as this was the plan. We're like really hoping that you don't attack from the north. Please turn around. All right, they fell for it. Everybody move. I don't buy that. Yeah, I just don't. I think it's we have a position where we're planning to be attacked in the north, but if there is an attempt to have, say, these knights, heavy cavalry sweep around as we're kind of taking the brunt of the attack from the north, there'll be French knights might swing around and try and hit us in the rear. We want to be protected from that. I think that's what they're doing, which would be sound. That's what you'd want to
Oh yeah,
do.
yeah, it would be sound. I mean, it'd be conniving to try to lure them to the south side, and recognizing that this is an even weaker position for the
Yeah.
Castilians to attack. But you're right; it probably is not upmost in their mind.
Yeah, I mean, I would love it if that was the case. Like, just because of the brilliance of that would just be so cool. Like, that's certainly the way Hollywood would write it, right? That's the way Hollywood would write it. You know, you're
That's
doing the
true.
Hollywood version. You're gonna say, well, this is really our secret plan. And oh, now uncover the spears. Ha ha! Surprise. Yeah, I doubt it, but
But
it works.
and I could see that the Portuguese are worried not necessarily about the frontal assault. It is a circling maneuver. They know that there are cavalry on the other side. They're experienced cavalry, French
Hmm.
cavalry. They can sweep around. So maybe you could say you could maybe stretch it a little towards my position of this intelligence to say that they now are protected on both sides, so they're not going to be surrounded.
Yeah, yeah, I could. Yeah, but yeah, I don't think they didn't intend the battle to happen. The main battle to happen where it did. But it certainly right worked great for them
Yeah,
because
yeah,
those things that were at least in my interpretation meant to slow a cavalry flanking maneuver on their rear also slowed a cavalry charge on their frontage at that point after they flipped on the field and served to defend against everything coming up that way. So it didn't any way that you took on this position was going to be
yeah,
bad.
yeah,
They have high ground, and you don't usually want to attack high ground. And they have high ground in which there is no lateral give. There's you're coming up one slope on the north or one slope on the south, and that's pretty much it.
yeah,
The
yeah,
south is gentler sloped, um, and has more frontage, so it would seem like you could get more to bear there. But as Kelly was just again before we started recording, some of the latest archaeology shows a pretty significant ditch on one side of that hill to make it so it was just as narrow as the north end.
yeah.
So yeah, it's a brilliant foresight to take this position, to prepare the position on the rear, no matter what the idea there. Brilliantly done. And Castile takes him on anyway. Now, is what Castile is doing here insane or not?
Well, now, see, that was what I was just going to say. I see a little hand stick up out in podcast land saying, so why don't the Castilians recognize this is such a poor position and simply leave? Or simply say, we're going to go down, we'll see you at the beach, we'll do a battle somewhere else, not today and not with you having such a great position. Of course, we've said this before about places like Nicopolis and Courtrai and Bannockburn, and then we never do get an army that leaves at that point, and almost always the ones that attack those positions lose.
But if say they left, right? They said, well, we're not going to attack there. We're going to go somewhere else. Well, you're now leaving an army of free a field, free to attack you. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, you'd
so
have to.
unless you can immediately take position on your own really great spot, and then sort of like play this dance of who's going to attack who, right? Uh, we got to do it. We're here. I mean, and it's not just like, oh, we need to do it like the clock is ticking, but it's not okay to like be trooping around the countryside when there's an army like
No, no, I
that
think
wants to take you out.
and that has to be considered because we don't know if Castile does leave that battle at that point and say, okay, we don't want to go up against the this really good position that the Portuguese are in. Where do they go? I mean, if they have to go back to Castile because the Portuguese, if they do leave that army alone, they can't go further into Portugal because that army may go to Castile and start raining terror on it too. I think that that's probably the answer. There's other aspects that we always have to consider in medieval battles. I mean, numbers. Everybody seems to have great thought in their numbers as being so overwhelmingly large that they can't be defeated. You remember we haven't done Agincourt yet. Mike's book's coming out, so that's upcoming program. But we're going to certainly see faith in numbers there. And at Courtrai and at Bannockburn and other places too, where the numbers uh, appear to be so many and such a big
Yeah.
differential that they've got to bring victory. And that's what the Castilians are feeling here.
And I mean, to be fair, numbers often do bring victory, right? I mean,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
sort of can point to, as and you've named several, right? Um, those exceptions where it didn't, and that's part of what makes those battles so large in our consciousness and so
yes.
legendary. Is it was the time that there were fewer dudes, and it went so well for them. Like that's not usually how it goes.
No,
You
no,
can
no,
have
no.
a
And
few people and get screwed.
one other factor. I mean, we don't really bring this factor up often, but both these sides think God is on their side.
Oh yeah,
And so, they're both sure that God wants them to be king. That adds to the confidence of certainly of the Castilians.
yeah.
They think they have the more direct line. They think God is going to be on their side. And of course, the problem is the Portuguese believe that God is on their side.
And if you believe in such things, they won. So I don't know. I don't know
Yeah,
what to do
yeah,
there.
yeah. It's the
Uh,
same God. That's the problem.
yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, history. Yeah, typically you got more numbers. You're going to win. I got in February. I think it's in February when my book on Thermopylae comes out. Right. I mean, there's a really famous example of a battle
Yeah,
where, yeah, we're outnumbered. It was way more than 300 people on the Greek side. Everybody, but they were vastly outnumbered. Had such a terrific position. Such a terrific position. Yeah, they still all died. Like,
yeah. They did. They did. Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
it's a good show for lasting as long as you did. Here, yeah, the smaller numbers take this. The Portuguese win, and they win because the Castilians, yeah, I think really do. The Castilian side does need to attack. There's if we tried to retreat in the face of this army, surely that's going to end in disaster. As I said, if you go past it, leave it in your backfield, like that's not going to work well, no
No,
matter what
no, no.
happens. So we got to do this thing, and yeah, God's on our side. There's more of us. Screw them. Let's do it.
So you answered your own question of about 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Was it insane for the Castilians to do this?
No,
No. Yeah.
no, it
It,
wasn't insane.
no, it wasn't. Uh, they
Uh,
didn't win, so we can,
they didn't win.
that becomes an issue. But I think I'm right there with you. I think the Castilians have made what they think is a very good tactical decision,
Yeah,
and they still think they can win because they have the numbers.
yeah. Battle starts late in the day. Late in the day because they do this kind of big maneuver thing to get around and have to reform lines and all that on the south side, the Castilians before they can charge up. Um, it goes south,
Yeah.
really quickly.
They go south and then it
They go
goes south.
south and it goes south. When they go north, it goes south. Because the first line that goes in apparently, what our sources say, is the French knights go in. So Froissart says
Yeah.
these 2,000 French knights.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that number, but one of Froissart's witnesses says 2,000 French knights roll in first. As ever, they are the flower of chivalry. Blah 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 blah.
Right.
In all of their finery, and they come rolling in, but we have all this trench work, these ditches that have been put in place, and that narrows, confines their field, makes it footing more difficult, all that kind of stuff. They get slowed down, and then they just start getting mowed down
Yeah.
from left and right by the archers, and those who make it through are now engaged in melee, but there's no lines immediately behind them coming forward. This first line goes in without immediate lines behind it.
Yeah. Not having infantry support, of course, we we know what that'll do. Throughout history, we know that that is not the wisest thing to do, is to have a cavalry force not backed by infantry, or even infantry to go in first. Although it always seems that infantry, either whenever they send infantry in first, the knights, especially if they're French knights, say, "Oh, no, no, we have to be there. It has to be our victory." In this
Yeah.
case, the Castilian, whether it was a Castilian decision, you go in first, or whether the French get on that side because they're mounted, get on that side first and go in because it is
Yeah.
getting late in the day. We don't know, but they are not supported. You're absolutely right. Not supported. So we have a line of French going in across this battlefield that is really bunching them together
Hmm.
in a way that they can effectively fight anyway. So they've lost momentum as they hit the Portuguese line, and they've lost any fighting ability where their horses would be to the benefit.
Yeah.
At that point, I think the horses become uh, not a benefit, but something that is
Yeah,
hindering
they're a
them.
detriment.
Yeah,
Yeah, because they're as they're getting hit with because they're getting hit with arrows too, right? So the horses, you got horses that are becoming unstable, which causes more chaos and yeah, they're unsupported. Now, I mean, when we do talk about Agincourt is an instance of where you did have infantry rolling in behind, so problem solved there. That then caused another problem, but we'll,
yeah.
we'll talk about that when we talk
We'll
about
talk about
Agincourt.
that one. And
Uh,
the Castilian infantry will come in, but
yeah,
they are not immediately behind the
right,
cavalry. And when they do come in, they have to worry about the fact that now there is a, a line of dead and dying horses and men that they've got to work through in order to get to the Portuguese line too. The Portuguese have not moved forward much.
exactly. Yeah, it's a line of dead, dying, and maddened, right? By via wounds on the horse's part, especially. And so, yeah, you get a kind of cascading effect of a zone where all this chaos is taking place, slowing down, taking all that momentum, as you said. And what terrific targets for your bowmen, crossbows or longbows, to just keep punneling into the mass. And pretty quickly, as it becomes bogged down, you get the crush of the melee as the Portuguese do move in for melee kill, seeing the disarray of the enemy. It gets bad quick.
Well, and the battle is over quick.
Yeah,
I think Govea and his team have said maybe not the half hour that some chronicles give, but that it doesn't last an hour. So it's not like at Hastings where you get hours upon hour of fighting. This one, it really seems the French go in, they fall. The Castilian infantry goes in, it falls, battle over.
yeah, and Juan of Castile, John of Castile, bolts,
Yeah,
and when he bolts, like that's it. It becomes a rout. And and meanwhile on the other side, John of Portugal, uh, famously does amazing job with a poleaxe, as I recall. And so everybody's like, he doesn't on his regalia and stuff. I think it's a poleaxe instead of a sword, which is awesome sauce, which is great. So yeah, this is one that ends quickly. We have no doubt about the outcome, no doubt
no,
about
no.
like any of this stuff, which is what makes Aljubarrota such an amazing fight. We don't have the question marks. Like it's all there.
No,
It's all there.
and I mean, it even seems that there is a little bit of follow up by the Portuguese, and then that's where many of the Castilians will meet their end. So
Yeah.
this is, the battle itself is costly, but it isn't, it doesn't determine a huge amount of death on the Castilian side, but they just can't get out. They're really
Yeah.
pinned into a bad situation. So leaving that area, well in hand, well in the land, well in Portugal. So not an easy access to
Yeah,
escape.
and intrinsically, if you think about kind of what I had described, like the Castilians had come in from a road from the north. They go around this hill to attack from the south. Well, in fleeing from there, if they just flee directly from battle south, like that's heading towards Lisbon. That's
Yeah.
like going deeper and deeper in territory. So that's not good. Well, the other option would be to flee the same way you came, which would be the familiar route, right? When that
But there's an army in between them and that
but
route.
but yeah, you're now having to go around the Portuguese army, which has they can still exit to the north
Yeah.
the way they originally thought the battle was going to be. They could go down that hill and cut you off there. So yeah, the route and the massacre that follows, like you can lay it out on the topography. This is why it happens. Like there's no question why they're all trapped in here, and it's just awful, awful business. More die uh, after the leaving the field than died on the field. I think most
Yeah, I think
sources agree on that.
that. I don't think there's any question about that. Yeah.
Yeah, they say as many as 5,000 or something die.
And even when they did the excavations of the bodies, this is one of the great um, excavations that they actually late enough in the century that they looked at wounds and they looked
Mm,
at the corpses and they found a lot of wounds were suffocation, appear to be suffocation wounds, the press of the battle. There seems to be some, and then fleeing wounds, wounds to the back of the head, wounds to
yeah,
as we see in places like Houghton and other places that have done the similar type of archaeological work. And yeah, that's if you're a Castilian starting this day, you think everything is there. You're going to win easily. You're going to be able to proceed down the road to Lisbon. That's the next step is go crown yourself if you're John, but does not happen that way.
yeah. Doesn't happen that way at all, and it has amazing ramifications. And for one thing, the idea of Portugal, this becomes a kind of national, um, nationalistic, for lack of a better word, kind of myth, right? This becomes
Yeah.
a foundational thing that this time that we defeated them and independence and as you said, if it had gone the other way, we might not have Portugal anymore. You could see a way in which that would have not happened.
Yeah. And just, I mean, I've been in Belgium when the 700th anniversary of Courtrai, and they're trying to downplay it, but you could tell everybody's really quite excited. Maybe the only time the Belgians ever beat the French, but it's still a national holiday. It's a national day of celebration because of the one single battle. Well, the same thing in Portugal. This is a battle that's still thought of today.
Yeah, and look, John of Portugal, now kind of undisputed king. He needs a queen. He gets it in the form of the daughter of John of Gaunt. So you have the English, literally kind of marrying into this and giving it more support. It's going to lead to John of Gaunt's, Iberian claim soon enough. Like what, 2 years later,
Yeah,
1 year,
yeah,
1 year later, I can't remember exactly. 1 or 2 years later, John of Gaunt is making his claim for the throne of Castile, flipping the script all over the place, and things get all kinds of fun that way. So, and and Portugal becomes more of a factor in the Hundred Years' War as a result of this now, because this win has made this alliance stronger, and yeah, it unfolds lots of changes for the next generation.
and I think it gives confidence to this family that now will rule,
Yeah.
because it's the next generation the so it's the kids that are going to come from Juan and Philippa of Lancaster. They're going to be the ones that'll go down, that think about Africa as the expansion place. They think about making Portugal wealthy
Mm.
in a way that the Spanish aren't even thinking at this point.
Yeah.
And of course, we know the result will eventually be the Portuguese in the Indian Ocean and all the way around Asia. So it's there's a lot that comes out, and I don't want to say too much determined by military victory, but it certainly was one that gave them a credibility they hadn't had before,
Yeah.
military legitimacy that they hadn't had before.
Yeah, no question, no question, and we're grateful too, just for what allows us to talk about with military tactics.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, what if you could have anything from this battle? What would you want, man?
Boy, I'd love to have the battle plan of John of Portugal. Would you?
You
I
want you
mean,
want you want to know whether the
I
plan was
want to
to flip
know,
it?
well, yeah, but I really, this is so well thought out, and it's such a brilliant maneuver. And a lot of people I've read, that are trying to write about Aljubarrota, they're comparing it to earlier battles, to Bannockburn and to Courtrai, of course, the smaller armies, these the big bully gets beaten by the little guy who's standing his ground in the sandbox, that sort of thing. But so I would like to know if this was planned. If if John of Portugal had, set it down, talked to his other military leaders, said this is what we're going to do, and this is how it's going to work. We don't have that. And boy, it would be fun to have his ideas.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, I don't think it was the plan, but man, it'd be cool. I mean, either way, right? If it was the plan, that's so Hollywood, like,
Yeah.
just awesome, right? And if it wasn't, it's such a testament to his and his commanders' command and control to,
Yeah.
as an army is marching around your position, to flip your position, reestablish, and nobody panics. At least not that we have in the sources anyway.
No,
Like
no. In
it's
fact,
it's not
it's
like anybody on the
yeah.
Portuguese side is freaking out. It's just like, all right, everybody flip around. Let's walk the other side, right? Reestablish, do the same thing you were doing before. We're good to go. That in itself would be awesome. Again, I think that is probably what happened, but yeah, it'd be so cool to know. Something from him to be like, well, and they tried to go around us, so we did what we had to do and
Yeah.
flipped it. Like,
About
hell
face.
yeah, man. Hell yeah. That's awesome. So yeah, that'd be the really key thing here, because we have so much of the other stuff.
Yeah.
We've got the chapel that was, built there, as you said, just like Hastings and all that stuff. But then we get a monastery, like we got all that stuff. We got burials, we've got archaeological, we got great sources. Yeah, did he intend to do that switch or not? Man, that's the big question there.
Even one of Castile is very impressed by that ability.
Hmm.
And in the letter he writes, and we talked about John the Fearless last week, the letter he writes, but that's from the victorious side.
Yeah.
John of Castile is writing from a defeated side, and he says he's pretty impressed by the maneuvering of the Portuguese army there. He has to be.
The other thing that I would love to have, and maybe it's out there and I just have not seen it. So if it is, and somebody knows, please tell me. I want to know exactly where the road ran, because I always talk about follow the roads. The maps that I have seen people do of Aljubarrota, how they map this, they show where the quote unquote road is going around the hill. When I look at satellite and the kind of stuff that I do, I'm not seeing that. So I'm not sure there's a road. Like everybody's assuming there's a road there because that's where they go around. I, what is that road? Where's that coming from? It looks to me like the road is actually going straight through on that ridge line, which is kind of where you'd expect it to be, up that ridge line, which would mean that the Portuguese were actually on the road. They were we are on the road. We're blockading the road. This is where the army is. And to get around us, you have to go off road to get around us. And that's what they did. And if so, that's all the more interesting to me. But I've not seen definitive evidence of where this other alternative road ran that everybody assumes is there. I'm kind of half wondering if that's some Victorian put on a map, and everybody's just kind of gone with it since then or whatever. And it's
And
not
this
it's
is
not
where
real.
I'd love to be in Lisbon right now and say, oh, let's just go up the road to see what the archaeologists have to say, because I'm sure they
Yeah.
found out. Even if it is even if you're right and the main road is running straight through, that doesn't leave off the fact that this could be a side road to get around this plateau,
Oh, it could be.
for farmer use, for whatever.
But
Uh,
it absolutely could be. But that, it makes a difference in terms of you got 20, 30,000 men. A farm track is interesting for
yeah, it is.
20, 30,000 men. Like, oh, what does that mean? What does that do? Like, how
And
does that
especially
work?
if you've got a large number on horse that'll lead
Yeah.
out. And yes, out of 30,000 men, 2,000 on horse doesn't seem like a large number, but it is in this in this context in a lot of medieval battles. And how do you
Yeah.
move 2,000 horse down a side road is a whole different. That's a whole different um, logistical situation than we see. If they're moving along a Roman road or they're moving along something that's more major.
Yeah.
So I'm with
So
you
yeah,
on
we
that.
we got questions, but on the scale of a lot of battles, we're kind of picking at straws because
Yeah.
it's such an amazing thing.
And at the same
So
time, having to say, the leadership on the Portuguese side, some of the best military
phenomenal.
leadership that we've encountered in our 34 episodes that we've
Yes. Yeah.
encountered. This is it. Juan of Portugal may be up there as one of the best generals that we've seen.
Yeah. Dude nailed it in this one.
Yeah, he did.
So yeah, look, our friends who asked for us to do Aljubarrota, I hope that hope it satisfies.
Yeah, yeah,
I hope it satisfies.
yeah.
It was
We're
it was
in
a good
we're
one.
in awe by this battle and everything else. We can understand also why it helps Portuguese image. Um, this was a
Yeah.
great victory against a bigger foe.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. They're gonna start locking the doors on us because we've gone through a couple bottles.
Yeah, I think they're out of Portuguese red.
So look, we do hope you'll join us for next time. And next time, y'all, next time is Q&A. So we have some questions that didn't get answered from our aborted Q&A
Yes.
with all that shenanigans you may remember from episode 30. So we have a couple there left over, but we've received a few more. But look, you got questions, send them in because
Yeah.
if you don't give us questions for our Q&A, then we're just gonna yap about whatever we want to yap about.
Yeah, that's right.
Lord knows what that'll be about.
Yeah.
So
Well, usually has to do with wine and other alcoholic beverages, but
so yeah, you probably want to give us something.
so
So as ever, a reminder. This podcast is sponsored by medievalist.net. So the best way to support us, other than buying our individual books, of course, is to join their Patreon at patreon.com/medievalists. That's also the absolute best place to drop us a line if you have a question for the aforementioned Q&As. Thanks for listening, everybody.
night, day, have a good time.